Okay, hello everyone. Happy Thursday afternoon, and welcome to session three of our webinar. This is the last in the series. It's gone by quickly, been really fun and educational for us, and hopefully for you as well. Session three is titled Future Water Management and Policy Leadership for What's Next, a forward-looking discussion on climate resilience, long-term planning, and future leadership needs. So I'm Steve Blumenschein, the Executive Director of CSU-WATER, and I want to introduce a few from our team and then our partners in this effort, and then we'll reconvene for a little bit of overview.
Hi, I'm Sneha. I'm a part of the executive committee at CSU Water and Source, and I'm just helping with the questions today.
And could you tell us where you go to school and what you're doing there,
Yes,
please?
sorry. I'm a master's student at San Diego State University, and my research is mainly focused on t the Tuolana River water pollution crisis.
Getting a lot of national news.
Mhm.
Elise?
Hi, my name is Elise. I am also part of the Student Source Executive Committee with Sneha. I'm a third year undergraduate geology student. I'm really interested in how geology affects groundwater transport and contamination.
Thanks. Blake?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Blake Zanti. I'm the executive director of the Maddy Institute. We're a partner in this webinar series, so good to see you all here.
And our other partner is the other Austin. Is he here? Austin Gilbert. Austin Gilbert is from the office of California Assemblyman David Tangipa. And actually, the origin of this webinar series was in a meeting I had in the Assemblyman's office in Fresno. It's just about a mile and a half from where I am right now. And I told him about how much I was learning about the legislature, how it operates, and how ideas become water policy by sitting in on a lot of hearings and following legislation and trying to get a better idea of Prop 4 and the routing of that $10 billion. And he said, well, if you're learning a lot, what about students? And ask them if they're registered to vote, for example. We put the webinar series together mainly for students to understand how water policy develops and some of the implications for future workforce. And also, we have a few hundred registrants for the webinars from our external networks who aren't students. And so, this is a great way to connect everyone in the room and talk about water management in the future, which has some uncertainties to it. So, overall, with our agenda today, we have two parts here, really five powerful speakers. First, we'll cover something called the California Water Plan. You're going to learn a lot about that. And there we have Joel Metzger. We'll do a full introduction when that comes up in a minute. And then we're very pleased to have State Senator Ana Caballero. And then our next part of this session in our webinar series, we're highlighting some regional collaborations. So we have representatives from the San Joaquin Valley Water Blueprint, Austin Ewell and Eddie Ocampo, and also the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. So someone new to our network we've really enjoyed engaging with is Jay Jefferson. And again, we'll do more complete bios as we start your section of the program. And then Blake and I are going to do a little overview at the end if we have a few minutes left, but we'll get you on to your next 3 o'clock appointments or whatever you may have in store. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Blake for the first pair of speakers.
Thanks, Steve. Well, it's my honor. We have two speakers that are going to talk a little bit about the California Water Plan. Really, the goal of this part of our discussion today is to inform and educate the audience on the California Water Plan and really looking forward. What do we have to look forward to going forward in California and legislative policy? I do know that the senator has another obligation following this, and so I want to be sensitive to that. So what I might do is, if you don't mind, Steve, I'll flip the order of the senator and Joel, just so that she can go first. But I'll go ahead and introduce both of them right now. So we're very pleased to have Senator Ana Caballero. She proudly serves the 14th Senate District in the heart of the Central Valley. Throughout her tenure, she has continued her work to uplift working families, strengthen public infrastructure, support small businesses, and deliver resources to underserved communities. Senator Caballero has been recognized for her integrity, persistence, and ability to bring people together to solve problems, and is one of the most trusted voices in California public service. Senator Caballero is the new chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and the author of SB 72, which modernizes the California Water Plan to set interim and long-term water supply targets for California and was signed into law by Governor Newsom in 2025. We also were pleased to have Joel Metzger with us. Joel Metzger is the Deputy Director for Statewide Water Resources Planning and Enterprise Project Management at the California Department of Water Resources. He oversees statewide water planning efforts, including the California Water Plan, and works across state, federal, and local partners to improve long-term water reliability and resilience in the face of climate extremes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Caballero. And Senator, we would love to hear from you about your legislation, SB 72, the main points of what this legislation really did for the state of California in the water plan, and maybe sort of the origin story as well. What was the research and the efforts that really led to the genesis of SB 72? So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Blake, for that great introduction and for framing the issue. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. And it's great to see everybody that's interested in water. It's one of my favorite subjects. And I think there's a famous quote, and I think it's Mark Twain, that says, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And there couldn't be anything truer than that statement. As you heard, I represent the Central Valley, the counties of Merced, Madera, and Fresno. But I also represented at one time the counties along the coast. And the coastal region in Salinas in particular have entirely different water issues. But the reality of the situation is that we've crafted a water infrastructure that takes water from the Delta and moves it to Southern California into the Central Valley. And 2/3 of the state rely on that Delta water in order to maintain a lifestyle. And so what that means is that Delta water becomes critically important. And we are one earthquake away from that system collapsing and creating real problems in the state. And so the whole issue of water has been really critically important, because we need to come up with water solutions that meet the realities of today's environment. What is happening with climate change? What we know is that we're having drier years in sequence, which means we have extensive droughts. When we do get water, we're getting them as atmospheric rivers, which means it's a big storm that comes in, may linger in an area and drop lots of water, causing significant flooding to a system that's not designed to take that water and to do something good with it. Our system of water storage, our dams, is for flood control. It's not to save water for the dry summers. It's a system of capturing water so that we don't flood downstream. So as a consequence, we release water from those dams during the winter months, which is when it's the wettest, and we don't hold it and keep it. And so if you drive down the valley, you'll see signs that say we're sending water to the ocean instead of keeping it for the dry summers. And so people feel very, very strongly about it. It's why they fight about it. So one of the bill that I worked on, SB 72, was a recognition, and there were a number of studies, a UC research study entitled "The Magnitude of California's Water Challenges," that identified the fact that we have a series of laws that we've passed as a way to start recognizing that if we don't handle water differently, we're going to be in trouble down the road. And one of them is now acronyms, SIGMA. It's a Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And that act basically says you can't extract water from underground aquifers unless you're going to put it back in the next rainy season. So you have to balance the aquifer. Why? Because if you don't do that, then you're taking out more water from the aquifer than is sustainable, and the land starts to collapse. And that land subsidence affects roads, bridges, communities. It's a fairly significant destruction of built infrastructure in our community. So what SB 72 does is it recognizes the projection in this this research study is that between 1.5 million acres of ag land to 3 million acres of ag land will likely be put out of production by 2045, 2050 because of Sigma. Because we have said we have to manage our groundwater and make it sustainable, then we can't be extracting it when we hit these prolonged droughts. And the projection is that land fallowing or land abandonment, whatever you want to call it, will start right around Los Baños and go south. It's right in the middle of my district. You take 1 million to 3 million acres of ag land out of production, and all of a sudden you have devastated communities and communities that depend on agriculture and agricultural production in order to exist, all the small businesses that are included as well. And so what became very apparent, and it's not the only study, there were a couple of studies that basically said we've got to figure out the second study that we used is entitled Inaction, Economic Cost for California's Water Supply Challenges. And again, what that study shows is that it estimates that without better management, California faces up to $14.5 billion a year in economic loss and 67,000 jobs lost annually. And that job loss will be to communities in my district and further south. So we need to plan. We need to look at our water system and figure out how can we create an opportunity for us to drought-proof California. I've been working on this for a number of years. I did another bill, SB 366, which was the first draft of SB 72. And it had tremendous support from the legislature, but there were concerns about the fiscal pressures on the bill and the fact that it costs to do research and it costs to look at data, and the administration was concerned about that. So Governor Newsom vetoed that bill, but you heard that I'm persistent. Water is the lifeblood of California, and it's certainly the lifeblood of rural communities as well, not only for agriculture, but also for urban uses. Many of the small communities have deteriorating water quality because of the amount of underground pumping that's going on. So we introduced SB 72 and focused our energy on making sure we had a budget request into the governor so that he understood that ahead of time that we were going to need resources in order to get this done. And I have to say that the Department of Water Resources was really, really helpful. They had already started some of this work. They do a water plan on a cycle, and what SB 72 did was added more evaluation, more metrics to require us to look at number one, trying to identify where there's the ability to create more water is the wrong word, is to be able to ensure that we have 9 million acre feet of water available in the state of California, whether that's through transfers, whether it's through conservation, or whether it's through new technologies to be able to clean non-potable water and be able to use it, or water desalination, or there's a number of new technologies coming out that could provide us with the opportunity to be able to ensure that water is available. And then that's by 2040, and then to set new targets for 2050. If you don't have targets to work towards, then it's fantasy thinking that government is going to be able to actually act on and make things happen. You got to have a plan, and then you have to have a financing mechanism for that. And if we're going to go out to the voters in the future and ask for bond money to build infrastructure or to create new technologies to be able to either clean water, non-potable water, or to be able to use desalination. Well, you got to have the plan and the cost and the ability to be able to say this is why we need it, because it can produce. It'll allow us to be drought proof. The fantasy thinking in my mind was always that we could conserve our way out of the need to create new options. And it may be that we can get there part of the way. We've done it in the past during droughts, but it is not sustainable. And some communities have already done a yeoman's job of conserving water, and other communities have not. And it always ends up turning, the finger ends up turning to agriculture and saying, you got to do something because you're using too much water. But the reality of the situation is there are a number of industrial uses in big cities that use a lot of water as well. And unless we're going to give up swimming pools and water fountains and the kinds of things that take water and use it, but don't use it for a beneficial use, we've got to come up with different ways. And repurposing the dams is one way to do it, because we wouldn't be releasing water in the winter that goes out to the ocean. It could allow us to save the water longer and use it during the drought periods as well, or the drier periods as well. It is projected that by again in these studies that by 2040 we will have no snowpack in the state of California. I mean, think of that no snowpack available for the summer months, and for the rivers that depend on cold water in order to maintain fish species. So it's important that we come up with a plan, and SB 72 is that plan that'll allow us to start thinking about it, to start having conversations about where can we get, where is this new water going to come from, and how can we move it to where we're going to need it as our state continues to grow, and as we have different interests, different economic interests all over the state that will need water. So I'll stop right there and then see if there are questions.
Well, we got to move on to Joel.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you, Senator. Really appreciate you sharing that overview with us. It's incredibly helpful. And I think it's a perfect segue to our colleague, Joel Metzger, with the Department of Water Resources. Joel, if you could just give us, I know we also want to leave some time for student questions as well for both you and Senator Caballero, but just give us an overview of the California Water Plan, both the 2028 and 2033 versions. And, what are some of the workforce needs driven by this plan? For example, careers in climate science, geology, hydrology, communications. I think we'd just love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, thank you, Blake. So first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some information and hear from students. Also, Senator Caballero, thank you for your leadership with SB 72. Thank you for being persistent in not giving up after 366 didn't go forward, and just showing that determination. And then honestly, the coalition that you build across the state to move that bill unanimously through the Assembly and the Senate, and then to have Governor Newsom attach a signing message to that bill saying this is important, we need to get this done. Really impressed with your leadership, and thank you for giving me and my team the opportunity to have a legislative mandate to do important work that we are excited to do, and that is going to be meaningful to the California residents across the state, and specifically to the agricultural community, to urban and residential residents, and to the environment. So really appreciate your leadership on this. And so in terms of the water plan itself, which is really what the legislation is modernizing, this plan goes all the way back to 1931. I was kind of like the first report that was looking at where water needed to come from and go in the state. That report led to the Central Valley Project being constructed, which we did not fund at the state level. And that was Shasta and Millerton and the canals moving water around the state. Then in 1957, the modern water report was released. And that was a product that led to the construction of the State Water Project. So that's the construction of Oroville on the Feather River and the California Aqueduct, which goes 700 some miles all the way to through the Central Valley, over the Tehachapis, and down into South Coast, and also the Inland Empire and Riverside, and connects all the way down to San Diego. So this is the one of the most engineered states, pieces of land anywhere in the world when it comes to water infrastructure. And it was those plans that led to these huge infrastructure projects that were built. After the age of construction in California, we did have more of an environmental awareness in the 60s and 70s, and we did change our approach on how we were working on water projects. And we haven't had any major dams be constructed really since New Melones Reservoir. We did have a Metropolitan build a reservoir in the 90s, but we haven't seen major water infrastructure projects since then. And the water plan shifted from an action plan that led to real projects with wet water to more of a inventory and report of what was happening across the state, how water was being used, and some high-level strategies on how we could potentially improve integration of water management across the state. And what happened during that period, as the senator so eloquently described, is our weather changed substantially. And we now are experiencing weather extremes where we have extreme drought for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, followed by some of the wettest years that we've ever experienced in our state history, in our records. And so we're being whiplashed back and forth between extreme dry and extreme wet. And the snowpack is something that is of great concern because the way that the infrastructure was built, we rely in California on a substantial snowpack up in the high mountains, mainly in the Sierra Nevada. And that snowpack, you can think of that as the largest reservoir in California. And so it does have a range. On average, we have 15 million acre feet of snowpack in a given year. That's 3 times bigger than Shasta Reservoir, which is our biggest reservoir in the state. And the highest snowpack we've ever seen is around 33 million acre feet. The lowest we've ever seen is down to 3. So look at that variability. And as the senator mentioned, our models are showing that the snowpack is going to become less and less reliable in the future. And we will not be able to count on that 15 million acre feet of snow. It's going to be less and less. Exactly when snow disappears completely or certainly diminishes, it's hard to tell looking out, but it certainly is predicted to not be as reliable as it is now. And so when you have a bunch of rim dams around the Central Valley of the Sacramento and the San Joaquin relying on the snowpack to melt and fill them again and again and again in the spring and the summer and the fall, and then release that water to agricultural and city needs, it only works if you have the snowpack. And if you don't have the snowpack, you don't have the water that you need. Now, interestingly enough, our models are not showing that we're going to have less water in the state. It's just that we're going to have water that comes as rain and not snow. And so these big atmospheric rivers will come in and we will have major opportunities still, but we're not going to have the snowpack to store that for us. And it's unlikely we're going to be able to build a bunch of new big dams on stream, given the concerns that there are about on-stream reservoirs. But what we can do, thanks to Senate Bill 72, is we can look at all these different strategies to increase our available water supply. And so we can be ready for the extremes and we can still have the quality of life that we want to have in California. And so the tools that the senator gave us in the legislation are surface water supply. We are looking at raising some dams and constructing new dams. Sites Reservoir is an example of a new dam. Sisk Dam, which is San Luis Reservoir, is in the process of being raised. And there are many other projects of that nature across the state. Groundwater storage. We have not just millions of acre feet of underground storage, we have over 1 billion acre feet of underground storage in this state throughout all the 100 different basins across California. Of all of the opportunity from these strategies, there's more room underground than anywhere else, and there are a lot of benefits to maximizing that. The problem is to get these big atmospheric rivers that create floods out of the rivers, to spread them out, slow them down, and sink them in. We do not have the tools that we need on the regulatory side and the water rights side to actually fully maximize that. And that is a challenge that we're going to be working through. So surface water, groundwater, desalination of ocean water, recycled water, stormwater capture, and demand management, which you can think of as conservation in your home, in your yard, and in agricultural land. And Senate Bill 72 works well with SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, because SGMA is driving the sustainability of all basins across the state by 2040, which is the same deadline that we have. And we are currently overpumping many of our aquifers, and we are going to have to find what the balance is. How many acres can we irrigate in a sustainable way across the San Joaquin Valley and Sacramento Valley? And so we will be looking at demand management. We also want to recognize that by taking land out of production, you're going to have major negative impacts on communities, on businesses, and on small family farmers. And so we need to do everything we can to find the balance between implementing SGMA, but also understanding the human cost of that. And so in order to do this work and come up with a holistic solution to plan toward the 9 million acre feet by 2040, we are launching a robust public engagement plan. And that's going to involve all of you. I hope that you will participate in this. And so there are a couple ways that you can get engaged. One is we are going to have a public engagement committee called the Advisory Committee. That committee will meet monthly in the beginning and then quarterly. Those are public meetings. And my team will provide our technical approach and strategies to the committee. We'll talk about them. We'll get comments from them. And this committee represents perspectives from all different interested parties across the state. And the legislation was very thoughtful about making sure that certain perspectives were captured. And we have all of those on the committee. We also have the whole state covered from a geographic region. And we have some really smart, engaged thought leaders who are going to come together and work with us to solve this problem. So you can attend those. We also will present to the California Water Commission public meetings on a regular basis and provide updates on this process. And you can attend those meetings. And we will be holding regional forums across the state where you can come and listen and provide comments to us as we work through these issues. And you also can go to our website, which is californiawaterplan.com. That's going to go live next week. And you can sign up for the mailing list and you can see updates on the process. So I'm going to stop there. There's much more to share, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. And I hope all of you can participate. And I will say there are so many careers at DWR available to help with this process: scientists, engineers, writers, communications professionals, human resources, operations folks. The list goes on. And we're always hiring. And I would love to answer any questions that you have about careers, how to work at DWR. And I look forward to having many of you join us and help move the state forward from a water perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. I think right now we're going to move into our student questions led by our Source Executive Committee member, Sneha. I'll turn it over to you. And I do want to just note the clock. I think we might have to catch up to make up some time for our next group here. So maybe we can quickly get through these questions, but I definitely want to make sure we get through them. So I'll turn it over to you, Sneha.
Yeah. Thank you, Joel and Senator Caballero, for joining us today. That was very insightful. I'm just going to ask one question very quickly so that we can move on with the program, and then I can ask the following ones after. The question is, what is California doing to protect itself from potential harm from federal rollback of water protections?
Oh, I thought it'd be an easy question. Part of the challenge is that we're trying to understand what all of the impacts are in every single subject matter area. And maybe, Joel, you have a better idea. The department may be looking at some of those rollbacks. Frankly, my lens has been on Medi-Cal because California is the only state in the country that has embraced healthcare for all. And we covered everybody, and then it's now economically not sustainable given the cuts from the federal government. I know that they are doing rollbacks on the Clean Water Act, on transportation, just all kinds of things. But I don't know ultimately what the final impact is going to be. We're trying to uh, pass legislation as the information comes in that'll keep us independent and that will allow us to focus on climate change and um, kind of regulatory issues as if the federal government was our partner when they're not right now. But I don't have any details about what they're doing. I know that they're rolling back a whole number of things. And we're trying to sustain our progress without going backwards.
Yeah, I'll jump on to that. I think, one of the things that's caught the most media attention just recently is what's called Action 5. And this is a series of changes to Delta exports that the Bureau of Reclamation has made. And the goal there was to be able to get more water exported from the Delta. And so, that affects DWR because we're also an exporter from the Delta, from the State Water Project. And in many cases, we're jointly operating that Delta and we have species concerns and take that we kind of jointly work on together. And so if the federal government kind of departs from that agreement and does something different, that does have impacts on our ability to export water and the species protections that we're committed to. And so what I would say with that is we are committed at DWR to following the science and making sure that whatever action we do is backed up by strong science and that we can really justify those actions. And so I think, with what's going on with the federal government, we're going to continue following the science and making sure that we're working through our partners with Fish and Wildlife and the State Water Board as we make any changes to things like Delta exports. And I also would say, our partners, the federal government with Bureau of Reclamation and Army Corps of Engineers and others, they're great people. And I think that everyone's doing their best, could kind of work through some of these changes. But we can't do it without them. This system is so integrated and we have to operate day to day at the staff level. And so I would just say that whatever political things you're seeing, just know there are a lot of really great people behind the scenes that are just working hand in hand and they're making this system work. And I'm just so proud to work with them and partner with them. The other one I would highlight is we are losing funding from the federal government and people. A lot of the federal agencies have had their staffs been just reduced substantially, dramatically so. So a lot of the work that we relied upon for the federal government staff to do is no longer happening. And one of the ones that's most concerning to us are stream gauges and snow measurements and forecasting and things of that nature. And so what's happening with the feds pulling back and not being able to staff that work is we have blind spots across the state and we're not able to see what we need to in order to make the predictions and projections to then make moves with our operations across the state, which are integrated and they have to be integrated. And so what we've done in response to those cuts is we've put requests for funding through to have us pay for more of those stations to man those and put new ones in and have more of a state control than rely on the federal partnership to make sure that those blind spots have light shown on them and we know what's coming. Because when it comes down to it, we are protecting life and property. And we have to make sure we can make informed decisions with the operation. So just a couple examples of some challenges there, but we're on top of it. And I think we're going to move forward, the best we can in light of these challenges.
Thank you so much, Joel. It's really insightful. And thanks, Senator, for staying and being part of this session. And with that, we'll move into our next group of speakers representing some regional collaborations. One is the San Joaquin Valley Water Blueprint, and we're happy to have representatives Austin Ewell, who's the executive director, and Eddie Ocampo, who's the board chair. Quick bios for them, which are really interesting backgrounds here. Austin Ewell is a prominent leader in water policy, agriculture, and natural resources with extensive experience across public service and private sectors. He currently serves as executive director of the Water Blueprint for the San Joaquin Valley, a California nonprofit focused on regional water solutions. He's also a founding advisory board member of the California Water Institute at California State University, Fresno, and an elected trustee for Area 7 of the State Center Community College District, where he supports educational advancement, workforce development, and community-focused initiatives. And also with him in the Water Blueprint effort is Eddie Ocampo. So Eddie Ocampo is the Director of Public Affairs at Self-Help Enterprises, otherwise known as SHE, S-H-E in capital letters. It's known statewide, and he serves on SHE's executive team. He has over 25 years in the government, nonprofit, and public sectors. He has experience in strategic planning, community development, state and federal legislative facilitation, government operations, and is proven in organizing and collaborating with rural stakeholders, communities, and schools to identify water and wastewater systems needs and solutions. So with that, it's really exciting. Some of the developments in the water blueprint and being a little part of that, I got to admit, no conflict of interest, though. I'm on the technical advisory committee, and we have an exciting agenda in our meeting with that group tomorrow. So you guys can hand it off. We have a question A and B for you before we move on to Jay Jefferson of Metropolitan in this section. So what we're looking for here is a little overview of the water blueprint and how it represents a regional collaboration, which is needed more and more in the state. In other words, we need to bring groups and their interests and together to best manage water for multiple purposes. So first, could one of you guys could decide, why does the blueprint exist and what problems will it solve?
Eddie, you want to Rochambeau, or you want me to?
Why don't you take that one, and then I'll add to that one there, Austin, if you don't mind. I think we can take it from there. But
we got a part B too, so
Part B.
take it away, Austin.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for allowing us to join. And wonderful comments by the two before by the senator and Joel, and really the water blueprint, especially at present day, is at a perfect spot to help further the efforts that are identified in Senator Caballero's Senate Bill 72. Especially with the recent efforts by the blueprint on what's known as the Unified Water Plan. I'll talk a little bit about that, but the water blueprint actually got its start almost 7 years ago as an organization to try to bring a unified voice to the Valley. I think we're all aware, especially being here in the Central Valley, myself having been born and raised here, is that there are numerous perspectives, numerous personalities, and a lot of history. And as the senator mentioned, there's a lot of passion and a lot of history around water. And so at times that surely can cause some controversies. And so really the effort of the blueprint was to bring those folks together on all sides of water as it relates to stakeholders, whether they were agricultural interest, environmental interest, academia, government organizations, communities, to come together at a table and to do the hard work to try to identify a plan and an approach to lessen the impacts that will take place through the implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which is presently being implemented and presently working to address the overdraft, which was desperately needed and passed in 2014, and ultimately is now going to lead to numerous changes in the landscape throughout the Central Valley. But the goal of the blueprint is to lessen those impacts where it's possible, looking at opportunities of moving water regionally, making sure that water can be used when it's in excess in those extensive rain seasons like we saw in 2023, when water, instead of it flowing out and being unable to be captured and used, finding those opportunities to use it, to put it in the ground, to move it to places where it can be spread and used, and doing that in coordination with the partners throughout, not only in the Central Valley, but also in Southern and Northern California.